Hello everyone, this is Menz here. I'm going to be playing the Tier 6 Russian heavy tank, the KV-2, here on Redshire. Now, this match ends up being an ace tanker match, and, KV-2 is one of those tanks that a lot of people like. I end up doing 2,639 damage in this thing, which, for KV-2 is very good. At the same time, though, it's definitely not like I got 5,000, some of those matches that you see that the KV2 is absolutely wreck face in. However, being bottom tier here against 8s, the KV2 is a very good tank when you're not the top tier, on your team. I actually prefer playing as a bottom tier KV2, honestly, or if I'm against 7s, that's a little bit better than 8s. But being in this tank, you're essentially just a direct fire arty, more or less. And knowing that, I want to try to abuse vision as much as possible. More or less, when you're, a bottom tier tank, especially one that can utilize HE, if I had went this way, I'm completely dependent on Artie not killing me not poking out at the wrong time and getting, half my HP knocked off, if not worse, or, trying to find openings for me to peek out, take a hit, and come back safely. So instead, I decided to go out to the 1 to 5 line. A little bit more risky, at least on the surface. However, I have a few tanks out here with me. The T-37 spotting, so I know there's no enemies between these two groups yet. So it's safe for me, to kind of move out here and keep my distance. With these guys here, it's less risky than it looks. Honestly, I'd rather be in a spot where this might not be a typical spot for a KV2 in a high tier match. However, to me it makes sense because you're able to kind of fight the battle on your own terms. Whereas kind of trying to squish myself in the 7 to 0 line, good chance I'm going to get spotted or basically taken out early in the match without getting a lot of damage. Same can be said for over here. However, I always look at the enemy team and my own team's makeup. I knew the KV-4 and KV-5 were very high chance to go over there. They're very large, heavy tanks. A lot of people stick with that mindset and head to that side of the map. The enemy team, as far as their TDs go, very unlikely that both of those TDs would push over to the 1 line over where I'm at. And very likely that, their Tiger 2, some of their heavy, because they have heavier mediums, would go over where typically heavy tanks went. And then they have Churchill 7, OI, and their TDs more or less I'm not too concerned about because a lot of times they don't push hard here. Like the Panther 2's out here, but it's not like I'm going to get swarmed by a surprise pack of 20 medium tanks. I know that's exaggerating, but you get the gist of it. So as of right now, though, I'm still playing this pretty risky, but at the same time, high reward because there's a Panther 2 not pointing at me, and if I get a big hit on him, it's going to be huge for my team. Honestly, doing 893 damage there, 2 critical hits, one of them could have been an ammo rack, a crew member. I've already did my damage, damage worth of the match as far as comparing it to your HP of your own tank. I like reaching that goal for every single match, and depending on what tank I'm at, light tanks you want to do a little bit more, but more or less that one shot I'm more valuable already than a lot of times what you expect to do in a tier 6 and a tier 8 match. And I set him on fire and kill him. But let's see. I don't have anything spotted in front of me yet. However, they are pushing on my KV-86. It's better for me to help him. A lot of times, you might not be doing, like right now, they kill this guy, 12T, not a lot of HP, but it made sense to at least get over there just in case things go south, because if you're playing to win, more often than not, instead of trying to do your best amount of damage, and what's best for you isn't always best for your team. And, making sure you conserve HP on your team is very important. And, it just happens to work out for me, and I whack the Scorpion G for 549 damage with 4 critical hits. So I kind of got a little reward there, rather than me push up you know, I would have been pushing up here, could have been spotted, shot through this little archway, or worse, run into things over here. But at this point, you know, we have a pretty decent lead. We were up by 3 tanks. The other side of the map, not doing too bad, and I got 2 big hits off on, you know, their tier 8 TDs, and we took their biggest guns out of the fight. You know, at this point, I'm about halfway to my total damage with, you know, basically just 2 shots. Now, there's an E25 back here. I stupidly made a shot there. Like, I don't know why I took that shot. Didn't make too much sense, but thinking about it, like, I'm like, oh, I'm going to go chase after an E25. Like, yeah, no. Way too slow. And, you know, I don't have the V range. He's got the camouflage. So I'm kind of in between. I'm like, do I want to chase after him? Do I want to go left? You know, it doesn't make sense for me just to go either which way. So I go to the center instead. There's still enemies directly in front of me. There's enemies on my left, enemies on my right, and I'm a tier 6. Better to play it safe rather than get myself in a spot where I'm just going to regret going there because I'm going to look stupid. Like, a lot of times, you know, KV-2s, you think you have this powerful gun and everything, which you do, and then you end up like hitting a track doing 50 damage or missing, and then you're dead. If I chased after E25, considering, you know, he didn't pop up right away, so he was kind of circling around here, he probably would have spotted me and just machine gunned me down, and I would never have seen him. But at this point, you know, we have a big enough lead where they're taking care of the E25, taking care of the T34 over there to an extent, to where I decide then it is worth it for me to push out here, because right now these TDs are more of a threat getting blind shots on these guys without us seeing them, rather than me pushing in and, you know, lighting them up to where, you know, even if I die, it's less of a risk at that point. But, you know, I'm slowly creeping up on their last known position, and, you know, this Hellcat doesn't even register me for whatever reason. He was probably typing at his team, yelling at them or something. Or he might have been AFK, but I doubt it. But at this point, you know, pretty much won the match. Those first 2 big hits, luckily I went to a spot where typically you wouldn't see a KV-2, especially in a, you know, tier 8 match. Sometimes looking at the map at a little bit different perspective, even though, you know, it's not the safest spot, in this match it made sense, in my opinion, looking at the enemy team, where my team was going, and how best I could use the gun without me getting into a bad situation. Because even if there was enemies here, I can still fall back to K1 and just start chucking rounds up the one line at them, and they won't be able to see me until they, you know, push far enough south, which at that point it's more risky for them to push on me and try to kill me, to where even if I die, they're going to take a ton of damage in the process. You know, I don't end up doing any more damage here, but, you know, it just goes to show you, Grant, this is a very good tank to play as bottom tier. Even if you're bottom tier tank, you just have to look at it a little bit differently. You know, it doesn't always work out, but if you play the tank the same way, depending on, or not depending on what tier or where you slot at in the map and match, you're definitely going to have struggles, because even in this case, playing the KV-2 as a heavy, where typically heavies go, wouldn't have worked out too well for me. I probably would have died, because KV-2s get focused on if you're in brawling situations. Better to get them out, low HP, big gun. But hopefully you enjoyed this video. Getting to, you know, the end screens here. Let's get these going. You know, mastery badge, ace tanker. Kind of forgot to add these in, honestly. Second screen here. You know, pretty good amount of damage for my team here. You know, second most amount compared to just the SPG, had a pinch more, and easily the most on the enemy team. And that's coming, you know, from a bottom tier tank. And then finally, the final image here. I can't believe I forgot to add these images in. You know, shot 5 times, hit 4. It said I penetrated 4, but really HE, I guess, blew up on the tank. But you know, I don't think I penetrated all of them. Like I might have and gotten low rolls, but honestly, you know, I think it just, yeah, it just says that sometimes. It's like the Hellcat and the last little IKV 90B TD I might have penetrated, but anyway, outside of that, I did spot one enemy and I assisted with 390 damage, but you know, not too much there. When I'm in a bottom tier KV2, no matter the map, try to play safe, play as smart as you can to try to get in a spot where you can get shots off without being the focus of attention. And ended up making a little bit of credits too here, even without a personal reserve. KV2's pretty good in the sense where you're chucking HE out of it most of the time. But anyway, thanks for watching this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. You know, if you haven't caught my live stream, I live stream here a few times a week on YouTube. Feel free to check out my main channel page, and also at the end of this video there's a link to one of my past live streams. Feel free to check it out. Otherwise, thanks for watching this. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and I'll see you around. Hopefully you have a good day.